Because I can sue your ass off, you're going to make a better product. That's how this world works. For everybody out there, that's why this used to be a great country. Your product hurts me, I sue you, you lose money, therefore you go back to drawing boards and make a better product. Only problem is in 1986, we passed the Vaccine Injury Compensation Act, often referred to as VICA. What this did is it changed it into a product like nothing else in this country, a product that cannot be sued. Why did we do it? Because it was getting sued so often. They were losing so much money from people whose children were dying or being incapacitated by vaccines that they blackmailed Ronald Reagan and said, we are going to stop making all vaccines unless you protect us from all of these lawsuits because it's getting really hard to make the billions of dollars we want to make in this business. Ronald Reagan and the Congress of the United States recognized that this was really a problematic decision. Why? Because you were taking away the market-driven incentive to make a better product, to make a safer product, to continue evolving your science like every other science in the world. This one would stagnate. This one would go nowhere. So what did they do? They said, okay, since we know the pharmaceutical industry is not going to evolve the product, they're not going to do proper safety testing because they won't have to. They have no liability whatsoever. We're going to make sure that Health and Human Services is going to oversee studies and testing because they have two jobs, not to just end infectious disease, but to also end vaccine injury. In the general rule, it says this: in the administration of this part and other pertinent laws under the jurisdiction of the Secretary shall promote the development of childhood vaccines that result in fewer and less serious adverse reactions than those vaccines on the market on December 22nd, 1987, and promote the refinement of such vaccines. Also, make or ensure improvements in and otherwise use the authorities of the Secretary with respect to the licensing, manufacturing, processing, testing, labeling, warning, use instructions, distribution, storage, administration, field, surveillance, adverse reaction reporting, and recall of reactogenic lots or batches of vaccines and research on vaccines in order to reduce the risk of adverse reactions to vaccines. And lastly, C, HHS must report on this so we can stay on top of it. Within 2 years after this signing declaration on 22nd of December 1987 and periodically thereafter, the Secretary shall prepare and transmit to the Committee on Energy and Commerce of the House of Representatives and the Committee on Labor and Human Resources of the Senate a report describing the actions taken pursuant to Section A during the preceding 2-year period. Every 2 years, HHS is supposed to be doing all of those things, surveilling and looking at licensing and testing and safety and all of this. They're the only ones doing it. Remember, pharma doesn't have to, no liability. We submitted a FOIA request simply looking for any sort of documents related to the work done by HHS pursuant to this mandate by the 86 Act that would show us the work on surveillance you've done, the safety testing you've done. We want to see every 2-year report that you gave Congress since 1987, 30 years ago. Well, they didn't respond. And so finally, we decided to have a lawsuit, a very simple lawsuit. This was the whole thing right here. It lays out that there's 3 ways essentially that you can respond to this. You can either give us what we asked for in our FOIA requests, all of the documents showing us the safety work you've done on vaccines since you're the only ones doing it, and all the surveillance work and the licensing and everything is said, or give us a credible explanation why you can't give that to us, or lastly, tell us you don't have anything and you have not done your job. Well, it went all the way to court, and they decided to settle. They settled with something called, this is a court-ordered stipulation. At the end of it, they say that The department's searches for records did not locate any records responsive to your request. The Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, Immediate Office of the Secretary, IOS, conducted a thorough search of its document tracking systems. The department also conducted a comprehensive review of all relevant indexes of HHS secretarial correspondence records maintained at federal record centers that remain in the custody of HHS. These searches did not locate records responsive to your request or indications that records responsive to your request and in the custody of HHS are located at federal records centers. And now we have HHS admitting right here, as we have been telling and reporting to you over and over since the beginning of the high wire, HHS has shirked its duty to make your vaccine safer, meaning no one is doing the safety testing. If HHS isn't doing it, what they've admitted here, then no one is. And the Congress has even demanded to see this meeting they're supposed to be having every 2 years.
All those institutions that normally would protect a victim, a child, no longer exist. And the only thing that's left over is HHS's scrutiny and vigilance. And we absolutely rely on that. And what HHS has admitted here is that there is no scrutiny, there is no vigilance. And of course, the gravamen of their strategy has been to make sure that vaccines are never safety tested. Prior to being licensed, every other pharmaceutical drug and pharmaceutical product has to go through rigorous, randomized, double-blind, placebo testing. Vaccines alone are immune from that. So instead of 5-year tests with true placebos, vaccines sometimes get only a few hours of safety testing or a few days. And of course, that's not long enough to spot injuries with long incubation periods like autism, like ADD, like food allergies, like autoimmune diseases. Nobody would contend that you would ever see any of those injuries in a test that only lasts for 4 days. HHS's job is supposedly to test, to develop a profile on those vaccines, on their safety, and then report to the public. And what we found over 30 years, they've never done it a single time. There's literally no genuine safety testing that takes place for any of the licensed vaccines in this country. The epidemic of chronic diseases is being caused by vaccines. And this is the first of a barrage of legal approaches that we've devised, a legal strategy that we believe will ultimately bring support to the parents, protect these children finally, and bring justice to the families who have been injured.
Here is your call to action. We now have a signed document by the Health and Human Services saying we have not upheld what the mandated rules that we were supposed to uphold by the '86 Compensation Act. Liability was taken away, and HHS was supposed to be responsible for safety, and they have done nothing. Zero. Nothing. Your federal representatives are much harder to get to move because they have so much pharma money. But go to your state capitals, go to every congressman, every senator, and bring this HHS notice and explain to them why this is so important. This court order right here points out that the one industry, the one place, the one government agency that's supposed to be protecting us is not doing its job. The federal government has failed us. Demand that your state representatives step up and make you safe. Number one, by always allowing you to choose whether you want to vaccinate your child or not, when and how often. Because this is part of the biggest lie ever told.